Appreciate everybody being here. Welcome. I won't talk about the select group that played the other day, but welcome to see everybody's whole and healthy. Obviously, it's been a busy summer.
Here we go.
Did a heck of a job, though.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Will and Mike spoke on that, the other day quite at some length. But, a lot of changes organizationally, reshape of the roster. But, 3 months into this new transition, it's almost go. And it's a very exciting time. There's been a lot of energy, great vibe in the gym. Having the few weeks, months to connect with players, new staff, continue to build and collaborate with Mike and Will. So I'm ready to go, and I'm excited. And we're right around the corner from next Tuesday. Be interesting to see how all this comes together, starting with camp.
Hey Wes, obviously this is not at all a one-to-one compared to your experience when you started in Denver, but it is kind of the more you're building, you're working towards something, the emphasis is on player development. I wonder how much of the mindset feels familiar, where you had to kind of get yourself back in the place of like, okay, this is a different starting point, I know how to approach that. Like, how much did you reach back to your Denver days to kind of get yourself in the groove for this season?
Well, I don't think the player development piece changes a ton. It's always, got to be a priority with, what we do on a daily basis. To your question, to your point, it does feel similar in nature. Looking back at how that played out for Denver gives you, down the road a little hope, but it's different. The process is different. The detail of it is different. And to Mike and Will's credit, I think they really dive wholeheartedly in that side of the organization. Prioritizing development is going to be a huge key for us to kind of forge this thing forward.
What's your feel of the roster so far? You obviously have on one end Bilal, who's super, super young. You have a guy like Denny, who's kind of been around for a while but has more development ahead of him, of course. What's your feel so far for where your starting point is in working with these guys?
It's interesting when you think about, I think, 8 guys on this roster right now that are 24 or younger. We have a handful of veteran guys, but there's a mix even within the youth group of experience. Jordan Poole has won a championship, at age 24. Obviously, you think about, Kuz, who's won a championship, and, he's 27, 28. Tyus has played in meaningful games, high-level playoff games. He still, to me, is a young vet. And you got guys, kind of like Gallo, Taj, Mike Muscala, who've been part of, playoff teams and played in high-level moments. So I think the mixture of that group, you see how it's played out, within the open runs. You got a very competitive mix, and that's probably what excites me most.
Hello, Wes. With player development this year, will it look different when it comes to patience? Last year, Johnny's played a lot in the G League and didn't take his knocks in the NBA. So, like this year, will Bilal just be up with the Wizards instead of with the Go-Go to develop?
Well, I think it's going to be both. He along with some, all of our guys are going to have an opportunity. As part of the player development, you want to see it play out in real minutes. So I think it's important to get those young guys opportunity when you can. At some point, you're going to need them to contribute. So how else to get those real game moments, that feel, other than getting out on the floor and having an opportunity to play?
Johnny coming into year 2, reasonable expectation that he'll be a rotational guy, or are you considering this is his rookie year?
I'm not going to put that expectation in writing. I want to see how competitive we are as a group through camp. Some of those decisions will shake themselves out. But, like I said before, I think there's going to be opportunity for each guy, and I think Johnny, Bilal, even Corey and Denny, are young, but they're all ready to take a step forward.
What's your prognostication on Kuz and his role for the team this year as a leader?
Well, he stepped into that role when we acquired him, two seasons ago. I think it's still going to be leadership by committee, but with he along with Jordan, both guys will kind of quarterback our offense, along with Tyus. So with that comes a great responsibility to perform at a high level, to be efficient, but also help get their teammates involved.
Hi, Wes. What decisions do you anticipate having to make about the starting lineup rotation and the roster as you look ahead to opening night?
Well, there are a lot of decisions. We talk about, best fit. You want to put your best players out on the floor as much as you can, but to the previous question, you also want to find ways to carve out minutes for young guys to get opportunity. We're going to be patient with our young guys. We're not going to rush it. But that's part of the development, internal maturation to see it play out. Those decisions, I think, will kind of play themselves through once we get through camp for preseason games. We have some time, obviously, before we see Indiana on opening night. So I think we'll take our time and play with different lineups, different groups and pairings to see what works best.
Danilo Gallinari, I believe, has a history with Winger, Dawkins, Schlenk, and yourself.
As well as Vanderpool and
right,
and Blair.
Yeah. So, what do you think about his acquisition? What he could do for this team, and also if there's anything we should know about his ACL rehab?
I'm not going to comment on the medical side. He looks good to me, but I had him in Denver, so you get a little bit insight on who he is as a person. He's a great guy. He's a competitor. Obviously, he's had varying experiences playing with a young team, playing alongside a group of contending players. He's a stretch big, and whether he's at the 4, he's at the 5, he's going to put pressure on the defense with his ability to stretch the floor, shoot the 3. He's a smart, high IQ player. He's got some toughness. So all that wrapped in a quality human being, I think, is a great start.
Wes, for people who haven't seen Tyus Jones a lot, what are some of the capabilities that he brings to the team and into the locker room?
His leadership, of course. I mean, he's essentially a coach on the floor. I think, if you don't know, he's one of the best as far as his turnover ratio. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's steady. He's going to give you a sense and a presence. Essentially being an extension of myself and the coaching staff. But he's also, he can score the ball. Dynamic pick and roll player. Shot the 3, I think 37% last year, 39% the year before. So he's got the ability to stretch the defense as well. And I think when teams want to go under, he can shoot off the bounce. Obviously, create action on and off the ball. So I'm excited to see where he is and how much he can bring.
I believe that you have 17 people for the 15-man roster on guaranteed deals. How do you go about whittling down the roster, which is something the team is going to have to do before opening night?
Yeah, I think just healthy competition. And I think it's, you'll give everybody an opportunity. And, we'll have plenty of practices. I know it felt a little compressed last year with our travel schedule, but plenty of practices, this preseason, 4 preseason games to kind of vet through some things, but everyone will have ample opportunity.
Wes, twofold for you. I'll ask the first one and then follow up for you. Michael and Will touched on the player development aspect, but I wanted to also ask you what went into reshaping and retooling your coaching staff, bringing in a guy like Vanderpool, Brian, kind of shifting what some of the guys who are already here, their roles were, obviously losing some people. What went into that decision for you, and how do you see that starting off with training camp?
I think, I think what's lost is, we had some guys who were coveted by other teams. And so when those opportunities come up, some tough conversations, and you never want to lose quality members of your staff. But, unfortunately, we did. So there were some vacancies we had to fill. It was a long process. It was collaborative in nature. Sat down with those 2 guys and vetted out close to a dozen candidates. Some I had relationships with, some I didn't. So really kind of taking a deep dive into the character, obviously basketball acumen, the player development side of it. And two guys we seem to kind of keep coming back to were Brian and DB. Both from different, backgrounds, but they've proven to be able to develop, young players, have relationships with marquee players in this NBA and in the NBA, and have been a part of winning, franchises. So, it checks a lot of boxes. Personality fit, character fit, the work ethic. So I couldn't speak highly enough about either of them.
And the follow-up to that, with the go-go and the relationship that you had last season with Mike and Amber, and the development of Jordan Goodwin, who's had a lot of success now, obviously Johnny, how do you then take the development aspect with such a young squad, trying to get guys minutes, trying to make sure they're developing on a nightly basis, utilizing both your staff and Cody's staff, but still having the focus on the development aspect, but not just from okay, what are you doing on the floor, but how are we seeing the success translate to 48 minutes in 82 games?
Yeah, I think Will probably detailed it, and he'll do a better job than I will now, but, that holistic approach of surrounding a guy, giving them as much reinforcement and resources we possibly can, from every aspect, even before they step between the lines. I think that's oftentimes overlooked as part of a player's development. The nutrition, the strength conditioning, the mindfulness, those areas are oftentimes underserved. But, really kind of making sure those areas are checked, we'll take care of the basketball stuff. And I think that's the unique approach about what we're trying to build, to get guys to create these habits, habits across the whole spectrum, of their lives, which then will allow them to really streamline their focus into basketball.
Wes, one of the challenges, as you know, in the NBA, among the many of them, is the idea of separate timelines. Star players are on a different timeline than rookies, and older players are on a different timeline than younger players. And I just wonder if it now feels like there's more alignment in terms of understanding the timeline of this organization in terms of how it's going to get where it wants to go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Not sure what the question was, but the comment I would agree with. I do think part of that is the group, in its totality, and the selection of those individuals. I think high character guys, of course, is always a must. Talent aside, and the versatility piece aside, but you want guys who buy into getting better, guys who embrace competition. Guys who are okay with, something bigger than themselves. And I think that's what we've, kind of put together here.
If the timeline is aligned from the top down now, or better aligned, I should say, what will that free you up to do as a coach?
You just coach. I mean, it's about development no matter what you do, but we want to see the day-to-day incremental gains that we can, kind of look back to. It's not necessarily going to translate into wins right away, but I think if we dive into those habits, and reinforce the positives along the way, I think eventually we'll get to where we want it to be.
Afternoon, Coach. You mentioned Kuz and Poole leading the offense on the floor. I think there might be a little bit less clarity on who the vocal/moral leader of the team will be. So, let's say, God forbid, the team goes into halftime down by like 12 points.
Won't happen.
Okay, right. Good to know. Who do you foresee being the first guy to rally the team together and speak up, and why?
Well, I mean, once again, you're learning new guys. There's an injection of a lot of new voices, and I don't want someone to be ordained a leader and forced to feel that it's all heaped on them. I think there's leadership by committee. Some guys are great with their voice. Other guys are lead by example. So I think the combination of both those areas, I think, even a guy like Corey, a young guy, it's okay. And I think we're trying to empower more and more guys to take onus and take ownership of the locker room, take ownership of the group. And I think that's a healthy balance.
And speaking of Corey, just with such a deep room on the wing with guys like Corey, Denny, Bilal, Gallo, all those guys, what do you think that the younger guys like that can do to stand out? And what are you sort of looking for in terms of giving those guys more playing time? What can they do to get more playing time as the season goes on?
Well, they're going to have to earn it. Bottom line, I think, We'll sit down. I'll sit down with each player, kind of mapping out specific roles. These are the things that I feel you do well. These are the things I need you to do, and these are the ways you're going to find minutes on the floor. With that, we'll map out some individual goals that correlate to some of their skill development stuff. But the bottom line, their role won't change a whole lot. Some of the goals may shift, may increase, but I think guys who dive into embracing what that is, those are the ones who wind up finding the minutes.
On the holistic kind of whole person development, how does that look for somebody like a teenager, an international teenager like Bilal? Has the organization added in a new person to kind of help him just adjust to not only adulthood, being
Sure.
a professional basketball player, but how does that look like specifically for an international teenager?
For him, but all our young guys, it kind of takes a village. So, I think he's further along than I think most people want to give him credit for in some of these other areas. He's played professionally, but still, he's playing in a new country, new style of play. There's some things on the floor that are going to be different. Subtleties in the rules, the pace of it, the physicality of it. All feels different for all rookies. So I think it's incumbent on us to just kind of bring him along slowly. And I've seen him grow. Even since we got him in June, where he developed through summer league, what he's shown us thus far, in the off season is positive, but it's a forecast. So we're going to take it slow and try to make sure that he's comfortable with each step that we take.
Kind of a follow-up on the emerging as leaders. Were you aware of any player inviting all the guys to get together at a place and working out, or just getting together sometime this off season?
Yeah, it happened quite often, honestly, and that's a terrific sign. And it wasn't always the same person. So the fact that it happened organically, guys wanted to connect. That does wonders for not only your culture but the chemistry of a group. When they do it, on their own, and it's not just between the lines or in a workout. Guys are hanging out, having dinner. They want to go out and have fun. I think it's terrific.
Just curious, who?
I'm not going to mention names, but it happened quite often, and there were a handful of different individuals who kind of spearheaded the movement.
Coach, you talked about the mix. You touched on the mix of the roster already with the vets. You have quite a few young guys who've yet to play 3 years in this league. With that in mind, looking on the defensive side of the ball, what's it going to take for this group to improve on that end?
Quite a bit, honestly. And I'm not going to hold on to what we did last year. I think that's unfair to bring that into a new setting with a new group. But we certainly want to take steps forward in that area. It's an individual and it's a collective mindset. I've said that since day one, and I think just watching these guys, I think they take more pride collectively in doing that. So that that's a start. Schematically, we're going to make some changes. I think to help augment some of the roster moves, but I just think it's one of those things you have to take personally. It's an area we all say beginning of the season we want to be a top 10, top 15. I just want to see us improve, and wherever that is right now to where we find ourselves in April.
Hey, Wes, several times this offseason, Michael and Will have talked about looking upon this team with fresh eyes. So for the younger players that were here last year, maybe the year before that, how do you and the staff that has been here and seen these kids every day look upon them with fresh eyes this year, and what does that look like?
It's actually easy. It's a new group, of course. You want those young guys to continue to maintain some of the areas where we saw progression. We saw improvement, specifically the last month and a half, 2 months of the season. I think that's a great starting point. They're going to continue to make youthful mistakes, and that's okay. I think we look at those as lessons and not failures, not mistakes, but opportunities to learn and grow. But I'm excited to see where they are right now, and I feel across the board they're better players now than they were, 3-4 months ago.
As a follow-up, those last 10 games, those young players were given increased minutes and opportunities. Do you subscribe to carryover from one season to another?
As far as just the minutes?
Just the positivity of what these kids were able to do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a place for that. You don't forego, the teaching, the coaching, the accountability piece, but yeah, of course you want to celebrate the positives, the increase in production. I think that's an important step for all those guys.
Wes, I don't know how much of a personal relationship you had with Jordan before, but I wonder what you've learned about him as a person, not as necessarily a player, since you've had him.
There is a level of maturity for a 24-year-old, I think, wise beyond his years. He's a basketball junkie, relentless worker. I think he's ready to step kind of into a leadership role. And you can just tell how he connects with, guys when they're playing open gym. He'll see something, a quarterback's, a situation might not go as well as he wanted. 2 minutes later you see him huddled over there kind of explaining, what he wants and how he sees it. And I think guys really gravitate to it. So it's great to see a young guy, maybe a change of scenery, but to see that growth, in a young player this early, I think is tremendous.
Is he very serious?
There's a serious side to him, but I couldn't say he's, serious.
Hey, Wes, you mentioned that the player back here.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You mentioned that the players are taking it upon themselves to get together and grow chemistry. In terms of having so many guys that maybe haven't played together before, and you talked about that new transition you're excited for, how confident and excited does that make you for the future and the vision that you guys have for this roster, that this stuff is happening already?
Yeah, it's happening, and it's happening organically. So I think that's the part that makes me most excited, that they're taking ownership of the group. I think they understand the importance of and the value of some of these things. That's leaves a cultural imprint. So that to me is going to sustain itself, and those type of things. Will pay dividends. Down the line. Obviously, we're going to have some moments. And some of those moments might be tough, but. You can always kind of go back to the fact that these guys are connected, and there's a relationship. There's a care factor. Not about just the result, but about the man next to you. So I think that's going to help us.
And I know it might be hard to compare, but have you seen a group before leading up to a season like this that maybe seemed as connected early on as this one?
At times, but not in its totality. To have this many guys this early is exceptionally rare.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Tactically speaking, how intriguing is it for you to have the push-pull of having some schemes that you have in mind for this group on both sides of the ball, but also reading and knowing your personnel and trying to form what you want as the philosophy for this team's expectations?
Yeah, I think we have the ability to play faster. We've got more shooting on the floor, which, of course, you never have enough shooting. So that part's exciting. You've got dynamic guys who can make plays, who can create their own shot, play downhill. And, the combination of those things is, it really opens up opportunities for a lot of players. Defensively, I think there are going to be some challenges, but also foresee us junking the game up a little bit. Playing a little more unconventional on both sides. And I think we have the opportunity, given our construction or our constitution, to do things that are a little different. So I'm excited to kind of see what that looks like. We've had discussions and debate as a staff, go back and forth on what we think's best. Some things that we like, and I think we have the freedom to try it.
Wes, there was some scuttlebutt from European media over the summer that maybe Denny was dealing with some sort of injury that prevented him from doing any sort of international competition. How is he physically, and has he been participating in any of these open gym runs of 5-on-5 or 3-on-3?
Yeah, he looks good. He looks strong. I think he had a tremendous summer. It's you get in an open gym, and there's some guys probably nursing some bumps and bruises, but I don't foresee any issues as far as availability when we get to next Tuesday. But guys will get through physicals over the next day, and we'll see where it shakes out.
Hey, Coach. two things you really hammered home towards the end of last season and also over the summer was that you wanted this team to play with faster pace and you want to take and make more threes. A lot of the offseason acquisitions that this team made, like Patrick Baldwin, Shamet Poole, they really fit into that sort of mantra. So, A, how happy were you that those guys came aboard? And B, how do you foresee that sort of playing itself out with these new guys fitting into that style of play?
Yeah, I think it'll fit in seamlessly. I think those weren't, edicts, that I sent to Michael and Will. I think it just played out that way. So I'm certainly pleasantly surprised and happy to acquire guys with those abilities. But those abilities also suit their talent. And, looking at, putting Tyus in situations where he's most comfortable, putting Jordan, in situations where he's excelled in the past, I think that's smart. That's good coaching. So we want to make sure to put these guys in position to have success. And, obviously areas where they're most comfortable is probably where they will excel.
Will referred to Jordan Poole as a pre-prime player, and it was in the context of his age, but the indication was that there's more upside to tap into. How do you guys plan to explore that upside?
Well, I think just the level of freedom that he'll have. It's a different situation than where he came, and he's going to have some opportunities maybe he didn't have in the past. So I think that alone is going to just show us, maybe allow him to take another step. The leadership piece, of course, is going to look different for him than maybe a year ago, and I think that's growth. But it'll be exciting to see where it takes us.
Wes, after your first season, you told Anscape that through a non-playoff year, one of the positives that you found was joy and purpose, just, I guess, in the process. This year, with all the new players, the development, you said the wins might not come right away. How do you keep that joy and purpose, not only for yourself, but Jordan and Kuz have won championships. Mm-hmm. The younger players are coming from college, and they've had success. How do you keep that for them?
Yeah, I think it's, measuring and tracking the little wins. I think those might not show up in the box score. Those might not be the highlight on, certain network channel. But I think there's I do think there's ways to incentivize what we want, what we prioritize, and what we'll celebrate. So, some of those will be internal measurements. Can a guy improve incrementally from day to day, week to week, month to month? Some of that development will happen organically. Some of it, might not translate onto the floor. But I think those are simple ways of kind of tracking and measuring success.